Thanks for joining me for another video. Today is the second part of arsenal building and strategy for the Open Championships team pattern, where I'm going to expand on what I talked about in the first video. You don't need to have seen the first one, but I'd highly recommend watching it prior to this one. Despite the patterns not being released prior to the tournament every year anymore, they remain incredibly consistent from year to year. They found a scoring pace they like for each of the events, and while they will make adjustments to the pattern due to changing climate, age of the lane surface, topography, etc., the general idea of the conditions will stay the same. The team pattern is usually 38 to 40 feet in length and around 28 mils, so heavier volume and on the shorter side of medium length. This makes it the tougher pattern of the two because it's tough both side to side and front to back, with a very defined zone on the lane you need to play it from. Control is the key to the team pattern. Despite the oil volume, the pattern usually plays very dry. The oil volume will get the ball through the first 35 feet with ease, but a couple more feet and stuff will fly. It's easy to look at the graph and say, oh, that's a lot of oil, but it actually creates a lot of shape because you're not going to get any earlier traction to help blend out the end of the lane without a lot of surface, and because the pattern isn't terribly long to begin with, the overall result is a lot of ball motion and a lot of overall hook. This is what causes the critical mistakes that way too many people make. First few shots in practice, you don't pay too much attention, just start getting loose, but no matter what you're throwing, it's going to hook unless you chuck it straight right. So then you move a little left, it still hooks. Move further left, hooks more. Grab something shiny, thinking more length, still hooks, but maybe doesn't look terrible. Now by the time the first game starts, you may not be comfortable, but you're likely at third to fourth arrow with something shiny and fairly weak. You've now completely screwed yourself before the set even starts. First of all, the pattern is so flat that when you miss left, no matter where you're standing, the ball is still going to take off. However, with plenty of hang existing to the right and an increased angle to the pocket from the zone you're playing, in addition to knowing that you need to keep your speed up to get the ball down the lane, misses right are going to hang and cause havoc. Beyond that, with a shiny ball and a lot of volume, you're going to create carry down. That's something that's not really much of a factor in the game anymore with higher flaring balls and 20 to 22 mil league patterns. Now with a much higher oil volume than you normally see, plus all the free back end in the world, even with higher flaring balls, you're going to push oil right, and the bow ties on the ball are still going to deposit some oil on the back end. This is going to make what's already a tough and tight pattern tougher and tighter. Aside from already having hang right, now you've pushed more oil right and have carry down the back end, plus it's still flat in the middle, and as you move left, it's going to stay tight. You've also prevented yourself from being able to get any deeper because the ball just won't recover from the kind of angles you've pigeonholed yourself into. This is where the team practice session can be extremely helpful, if for nothing else than to show you what not to do. You can set a timer to mimic how much work you're going to get done in practice, try different strategies on the two different lanes like we did last year, or generally just get comfortable. The idea is usually very simple with team though, and I think there are some hard and fast rules that you can follow that will at least help you do better than usual. First of all, start with your team building. Never ever ever take an odd number of teams. This ensures that you don't get paired with some random team that doesn't know what they're doing and will wreck the pair. It's nice to have a good mixture of bowler styles as well. You want to condition the lanes to your liking in practice and throughout the first game, but when you get them to where you want them, you don't want that look disappearing too quickly. For example, if you have two teams full of straighter bowlers, the track's going to get beat up in a hurry and start forcing people places they don't normally play, in addition to having to make adjustments far more quickly. Building at least two solid teams with a good variety can be the most important thing you do. For lefties, this strategy is going to be a bit different, and I'll cover that as well. When you're actually bowling the event, starting in practice, have each bowler throw one ball and give as little lane courtesy as possible. It's practice, and if you don't run into someone, who cares? Depending on who you're bowling around, they might have issues if you jump them or get on the approach at the same time, so you'll likely have to be mindful of that, but on your own pair, if you've taken two teams, it should be workable. This will maximize the amount of shots teams are able to throw because you're not waiting for the ball to come back, to towel off, and then get set up again. That wastes about 15 seconds every time. When you have 10 people on the pair getting 10 minutes of practice, wasting 15 seconds every single shot adds up extremely quickly. Throw your shot and get off the lane and get in the line for the next lane. The bowler behind you can then be set up and ready to go when the sweep raises, which allows you to throw shots literally as fast as the pin setters will let you. In my opinion, the first 8 minutes of practice should be straight lane conditioning. Don't try to get lined up. It's hard to get lined up before you get warmed up anyway. I take one ball specifically for the first 8 minutes of practice that's at 500 grit. You want it to be a high flaring, strong asim so that you can take as much oil off the lane as quickly as possible. Last year I used the Crux Prime for this, and that's what I'm going to use again this year. It's got a wide footprint, it flares a lot, and at 500 grit I'm not sure there's anything that can pull oil off the lane faster. You're going to want to try to burn up the 3 to 5 board area straight up the lane. Don't play third arrow and get the ball out to 3 to 5. Play straight up 3 to 5 and just go for picking up oil. Once you get to the 8-minute mark, the 2-minute warning will be announced. Once you get to the 8-minute mark, the 2-minute warning will be announced. This is the point where you want to start lining up, maybe fit a quick shot in at the 10 or the 7 pin if you can. The point of all the spare practice prior to the event though is that you should be automatic there, but if it usually takes you a shot or two at the corner, do that. The first game needs to be a combination of staying out of trouble and still conditioning the lane. There are several years worth of history of when they did the live streams on YouTube prior to 2016, I believe, that featured better teams bowling, which would show you what they did and how they played the lanes. It was always part of the strategy to stay out of trouble the first game as you continue to break the lanes down and somewhat sacrifice a little score in the first game in order to set yourself up for a big second and third game. Too many teams get a few shots out of practice, panic, and start chasing score too early, which really hurts them in the later games. You'll want to stay as far right as you possibly can so that you can continue to create friction to the right and essentially try to turn the pattern into a house shot. That's not entirely possible because of how flat the pattern is, but if you can get a bumper to the right built, then that's when you can move further inside to use angle to your advantage. Then you'll be able to get around the middle and still get recovery rather than hang. At that point, a little carry down will actually help settle down the middle of the lane and give you some miss room. The best bowlers in the world never count solely on their accuracy. They try to find the most room on the lane possible to help keep them loose and react so that they can comfortably execute and allow their accuracy to produce results. If you feel like you're bowling in a phone booth and have no margin for error anywhere, you're going to tighten up and try to force ball reaction, which doesn't and never has worked for anyone. Lane conditioning or creating good transition is an absolutely critical part of bowling well on the team pattern. On the left side, it's both a little easier and a little tougher. It takes more time to build something on the left, but you're most likely going to be using urethane anyway, and as the back ends carry down, you'll be moving left, so you don't really want to create a big friction spot that's going to force you inside. While the right needs to concentrate on developing a track, you on the left side need to work on some carry down so that you get the back ends to settle down. Urethane will help the back end settle down and allow you to move closer to the gutter. The gutter hooks on the left side a lot more willingly than on the right, so if you can build some hold down lane and square up, you should be able to walk it in all day long. You shouldn't have to move much, if at all, and even if you do, it's not going to be much. Even if you plan on using reactive, most that do have to use strong stuff at 500 to 1000, I'd still recommend using urethane in practice to try and calm down the back ends. This is generally true of the difference between each side of the lane. On the right you need friction first, and on the left you need hold first. Get it to start up early and walk in down lane and you should be fine, aside from the obvious challenge of bowling on the left side of the lane on something tough to begin with. This has been part 2 of the Open Championships team strategy. Join me next time for the most interesting part, which is a dedicated look at the difference between creating good transition and bad transition on the team pattern and what each will look like. Thanks for watching.